Hola, bienvenidos, and welcome to another episode of Putia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos. If you haven't been here before, thank you for coming. If you have, let's do this. I'm your designated Tia Bruja. All right, so thank you for joining me. Happy Latina, Latinx, Latino, Hispanic Heritage Month. A lot of people use different terminology, and I think that we should learn to accept it. Just because it isn't for us doesn't mean we have to use it. And equally so, it's like pie, y'all. Just because people are having more pie doesn't mean we can't have more pie. Everybody just have pie. It's fine. And I know that's not how it goes, but now I just really want some pie. Like apple pie sounds delicious. But that being said, people having the opportunity to call themselves something does not in any way take away from our opportunity. I can't speak for all Latinos, but I can definitely speak for Mexicans, and we have a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do. Sometimes we're the ones who bring each other down the worst. We have a saying that goes, un mexicano se come otro mexicano. We're fucking sharks. We're sharks to each other. We eat each other. We destroy each other. And I think that is for a lot of people due to a lot of ancestral work they have to do. Today's guest really brings it up, the fact that we don't talk enough about ancestral curses. If you listen to the last episode, I feel like this is very fitting because I sort of talked about that in the last episode. And so today's guest is Nix Murguia, and I'm really excited to have her on. The Brujeria, Latin, and specifically Mexican witch community, it's very small. So we all either know of each other, follow each other, or unfortunately, when there's drama, we all hear about it too. It's been really, really a pleasure just getting to know Nix and all the different work that she does. And although it's not particularly what I'm doing, we're both doing the work to relieve a lot of different curses and to allow people to live their life in the way that they see fit. Because at the end of the day, we can respectively live our lives as long as other people aren't fucking hurting people or doing toxic things. I think people should be allowed to do what they want. You know, she's made me realize that on this show, right, I don't want to be your dominatrix, Thea. I don't want to lecture you. I don't want to, and I think that that's something I've been working on post my Saturn's return, right? Like I'm trying to be more tender. I'm trying to be more loving. I'm trying to give more grace, because what fucking use does it serve anybody, specifically you, to just come at you really hard, unless you're into that sort of thing. And if you're into that sort of thing, you can definitely Venmo me privately for I'm just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. We have a lot of work to do with our community, you know, and it's important to uplift each other. It's important to support each other. And I'm just so grateful for that piece of advice that Nix has given. And she does so many different things. She's hilarious on TikTok. If you don't follow her, her account is Spiritual Haunt Girl. She did a bunch of different Haunt Girl Summer merch, which if you follow me on Patreon or you just listen to the podcast, I made that cocktail called the Gore and Lore, which was inspired by just the tumultuous and violent history of tequila and the tequila industry, which if you know, you've been here for a little bit, my roots are deep into. And the more that I dig into my family history, the more that I do that ancestral work, right, I learn more about myself and I really understand a lot of the shit that has to be undone to make me a more tender, loving individual. So, our ancestors came from rough shit, y'all. A lot of our ancestors came from really rough shit, and it's such powerful medicine. Also, it really hurts. Sometimes it's a lot of undoing within you. You know, I love this episode because we talk about a lot of things that need to be undone, that need to be worked on. She has an online botanica, and I'm going to stop gushing about her, and I'm going to let you see what she's all about. I'm really excited to finally sit down and do this because we've been trying to schedule it, and I think respectively, both of our lives are fucking all over the place. But Nix, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy we finally got our schedules aligned.
I don't know if you knew this, but I just found out that it's the year of the Phoenix. So I think collectively we are all going through it, having to rise from the ashes, so to speak. So I don't know about you, but that seems pretty spot on for me.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've heard just recently too about fixed sign energy. And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, that makes sense because the majority of my chart is Scorpio. So I'm like, fuck, this is why. But now that you say the Phoenix theme, that makes way more sense.
What does your craft, your spiritual practice, what does that consist of for you? Where do you find your magic power?
So I like astrology and I'm very intrigued by it, but I only know to a certain extent and I become overwhelmed. Some of my closest friends are like astrology geniuses. So I just kind of back down in that area. I know enough to say I know more than most people, but I just kind of back off from that because I feel like I'm more empowered by brujeria. I like to do Catholic folk magic. And for some really weird reason, like I enjoy like doing tarot readings for other people and cleanses. I do like most of my cleanses are local. So local cleanses, but that's where I'm in my lane, you know?
Before the cast started, we talked a little bit about just our background with religion and Christianity and Catholicism and whatnot. When did it kind of go from just, this is what it is, to becoming more of like a brujeria?
Like it wasn't something I expected to happen. Honestly, I was just doing a lot of this stuff. I don't want to say for fun, but to some degree, it was just, I was the person, like I was like a fact person. So I'd be like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. Like I would just tell people facts. And then during COVID, I was just bored one day. Like I wasn't even on the witch platform at all. My community didn't build from the witch platform. Like I didn't make clientele that way. It was literally, I just was on my personal page and it was COVID. And so I would just get fucked up. And then like one night I was like, let me read tarot cards for you guys. It started there and it just, I don't know, my community grew, like it was all word of mouth. And then next thing you know, I'm like charging people. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, to be honest. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know like the business aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I had no idea that there were actually people getting paid to be brujas. And I'm like, oh, I just have always done this for free as like a side fun thing.
And that makes sense because I think there's a lot of people who came to Instagram. And right now I want to speak like specifically from an Instagram point of view. There's a lot of people who were doing it. And then it baffled a lot of people like you who were just sort of, what? This is a thing? But everything has their niche, right? And I love that you are all about like being a spiritual haunt girl. And I know you've had to rebrand.
Yeah.
We'll get into a little later. But what kind of made you start selling Haunt Girl Summer merch?
You know what? Like, so it's really weird because I like really enjoy the gothic aesthetic, but I do feel like sometimes it's a stereotype that all girls that are obsessed and love Halloween are going to look like that, which I love it, but it just was never me. I'm a little bit more hood. I'm a little bit more, I look like a buchona sometimes. Like when I get dressed up, I'm going to look more like buchona, but I love Halloween. So I just remember listening to Megan the Stallion and she talks, hot girl summer and all this. I don't know. The idea just came at a very weird time. And I was like, I'm like a haunt girl. Like, and I was already trying to get a new name. I'm like I'm a hot girl, but I like Halloween. So I'm a haunt girl. That's kind of where it came from. And then I just changed my name and people like loved it. So I'm like, I should make cups and stuff. It just really went from there.
We collaborated on a drink recipe. I want to say that when I was in Mexico, I used the black one with the bats and stuff on it. That's the Starbucks cup. Everywhere I went.
Yes.
It was cool because I would just go to places. I was like, can you fill this up? Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, whatever. People would just see me and they're like, oh, here she comes with her cup again. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really do. And I loved the colors you picked because I wasn't selling those colors. And when you told me, I was like, I fucking love these colors, like very fucking Frankenstein vibes. So I love that. And I even kept one for myself.
And you did have like a huge variety of them. Are you still selling them now?
Not right now, but I sold like the last of them I do like vendors pop-up stuff here. So I'm going to try to incorporate like where I'll put Haunt Girl, but I just have to, like, summer's coming. No one cares about summer anymore. I feel like once it gets to September, people are like, fuck summer.
Listen, all the Halloween shit's out.
It is, yeah. So I'm like, I gotta redo this. I have to figure out how I'm gonna do. And I'm thinking of like cup ideas, but I've been like, I don't know. I've been all over the place with ideas and then trying to find the time to do it. It's just been, and right now so busy for me. I think as a bruja, like right now, people actually fucking want to fuck with you right now. So you have to do what you need to do. Like I'm doing some Halloween parties as a tarot reader and I always go dressed up as a witch and people love that. It's like you're kind of having to put on, I don't want to say a performance like it's fake, but
you kind of do. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're dealing with people who wear this as a seasonal theme for them and this is a damn lifestyle for you.
Like, it is what it is. This is Bruja season. Make your money.
It is. I love it, honestly. Like I love getting dressed up. I love Halloween. And you know what's funny? I do dress up all year. Like the Stranger Things came out, I dressed up. I already had the costume because I have totes on totes of costumes. So it's all year for me. But it's like, if this is the time to shine, I'm sure if somebody loves football and they love it all year and play all year, but like once football season comes, they're just as fucking excited as I am with Halloween. Yeah.
But as summer is kind of coming to a close, who's your ultimate haunt girl summer vibes?
Okay, so I had thought about this for so long, and I feel like I would want to say like somebody traditional, like, oh, I love like Elvira, but no, which I do love Elvira, by the way, but Winona Ryder is like my hot girl summer. Like, she's everything to me. Like, I feel like she's very representative of me. Like, I mean, it's weird because she's in so many dark comedies that I think that's my ultimate haunt girl.
You know what? That's a really good one. She's definitely got that where that's a functional goth person.
Yes.
You're out in the world, like that's just sort of your aesthetic. She's been in a bunch of Tim Burton stuff, and she kind of has kind of like that Tim Burton look to her in real life.
She does, yes, because I love her so much.
Yeah.
I love Heathers. I fucking love Heathers so much. She's very much like me, where it's like, she's not giving maybe that stereotypical goth girl vibe, but she's very much about it. I mean, she was in Beetlejuice too, which is my favorite, but Edward Scissorhand, like she's just been in so many that I think she comes off as that. She's more like me, like the summer haunt girl.
All right. Well, then I'm throwing out the ones that were maybe a little too obvious. Jennifer Tilly. Jennifer Tilly is my haunt girl summer.
Yes. Yes. That's what I'm telling you. It's just like somebody that like maybe wasn't, because there's so many classics, which I love them too, but it's just, I don't know. I like that more. I like that.
Yeah. First of all, I feel like Jennifer Tilly is very underappreciated. She's the bride of Chucky. If I don't know why I don't have a Tiffany doll, to be quite honest with you, this badass doll wearing a wedding dress, she's like, I'm going to make it punk rock though. And she's like wearing a leather jacket.
Yes. I like her too because I feel like she still has that baddie girl vibe. I think you're right. She's very underrated. They have Chucky bride sweaters at Target right now, just so you know.
Funny, I just made it to Target, but I didn't look at the clothing section. My first thing is I always go to the dollar section. And this year, Target's dollar section is real good.
Dude, I know. I'm like, damn, I'm going to be using some of this stuff all year round.
Okay. Did you get a spatula?
Yes, I got two. I got the bat and the ghost.
I got me too. I got, what else did I get? I bought all of the socks that they had in a size that would fit me. Because dollar Halloween socks, fuck yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love those. I didn't get a lot, but I got some slippers too, like slipper socks. And I was like so excited because I had to get a size bigger too, because I was like, these are not going to fit. I've learned from the past. I'm trying to think of what else I got because I got some good shit.
Also, check out, if you haven't, Dollar General or Dollar Tree. They have a pretty good selection this year too.
I'm going to go look because I have so many projects just sitting in my garage. You'll probably see me eventually upload them, but I haven't finished any of them. I bought a ton of snow globes from Target last year and I'm turning them into witches balls, like crystal balls. And I'm like, it's just finding that I've had them since December and they're just fucking sitting there. And I finally got them painted, like the bottoms, because I don't want them to be red and white, you know, because they're not for Christmas. So I repainted them. I did that step. And then I'm also making baby cages because I bought a bunch of babies off of Facebook Market last year and I just creepified them, but I never got to building the cages. So that's my goal.
That's so rad. I can't wait to see a final product of your crystal ball because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, you'll like it. I was thinking of like doing some Cricut on it too to like put wording. We'll see. I think of all these ideas and I don't know if it's like that for you. And then like at the end, I'm so exhausted that I'm like, I don't want to follow through with any of these.
That's like the story of my life because I have so many things going on all of the time. And it just depends which one comes to fruition and time and scheduling. Because we had originally planned to record before it was the 100 Days of Halloween. I did make that cocktail still. Have you got a chance to try it?
No, but I keep, you know what? You like have me so like on this crazy, which I need to start looking again because I gave up. But I'm sure now they have to have more of that tamarindo Smirnoff.
It went big on TikTok, so it was sold out everywhere.
Okay, that's why. And when you had sent it to me, I'm like, why can't I find this shit anywhere?
It's good. It's very, I haven't used it in a Bloody Mary yet, but I think that that's something I need to try because that just sounds fucking delicious.
Oh. Is that how everyone else is like doing it in like a Bloody Mary?
I don't know. I saw somebody on TikTok who was doing it with orange juice. So it's like I muddled mango, I muddled watermelon, I had the strawberries in the little brain molds. It was very based on fruit and it was just really good.
I think I'm just going to try it the way you did because I feel the same way. Like, I don't know if I can mix it with like some of the other stuff that I've seen. I'm like, I'll just try it.
I just wanted something very light and like refreshing, but still have a sweetness to it, but not be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like I think in the recipe, for some people who do like more sweet stuff, I was like, do it with Sprite. But if you don't, do club soda. It's funny, the day that I was doing all the photos and stuff, I ended up having just a bunch of them left over. So we tried one with Sprite, we tried one with club soda, and my sister and my friend were just like, you know what? They're good either way because the fruit really gives it a nice flavor with the flavor of the tamarindo.
I gotta try this. I have so much homework that I'm like taking from you that I'm just gonna have to try it all.
And it gives us, we could have a follow-up episode and be like, this is what happened with the homework you gave me. Because before the cast, we were also talking about Janet McCurdy's latest book, which if you haven't checked it out, I'm just going to keep telling everyone to check it out. And also The Social Network. Great movie. It's a really good one.
Yep. I'm going to do both of them. And then, we'll just have to do a follow-up.
Nix, this has been such a great time. I'm so glad that we've had this space. But the one thing I want to ask, I know that you've had to shift gears and you had to start a new page, which is now Spiritual Haunt Girl. And it was your spiritual home girl. What happened with that? I know there was a big issue with you and scammers. Did that end up getting you taken down? Like, what's going on?
Okay. So initially, that's what I thought as well. I thought it was like scammers because Instagram, Facebook, they will not like really disclose too much information. But when my TikTok got taken down, I realized it was, this is like an issue going back to almost a year ago where somebody had messaged me and they were like, hey, your username was trademarked. And when she messaged me, I was like, it's social media. So I was like, I just don't. I paid attention. I thought we had like what I would consider like a mature adult conversation where I'm like, okay, because I know a little bit about trademark laws. And I'm like, well, we're not going to get confused. That was my theme. Like, we're not going to get confused. And that's how I responded. And then it ended up leading to like her writing me a letter, which again, it didn't look like, it wasn't a legal document. So when I had it reviewed by a lawyer that I was just kind of working with for something else for our restaurant, I was like, I don't know. I think he did. I think still to this day that he gave me honest and true advice. But it's like, does TikTok want to like go through the whole thing of investigating everything? I think one of the emails that even they sent me from TikTok was like, this is a third party dispute. You guys can settle outside. That is kind of what happened that there. She had the trademark for it, but it was just kind of, there's like in between here and there, just like so much drama infused in it. I literally forgot this person existed. And then, the next thing I know, it's like, oh, all your pages are taken down, including because everything's connected, my Facebook with my personal stuff in it, kind of like my diary of my life, just a huge mess.
That makes me so sad because just thinking back to all the photos I've had on all these different platforms, did you have those saved somewhere else, like first and foremost? Because I would be the most devastated about that part personally.
So the thing was like, I wasn't as upset about my business account because I'm seriously like, I feel like I'm one of those people like that Drake song where he's like, put me in some soil and I'll just shoot back up type of people. But I think I was more upset the fact that personal things were lost of mine, like pictures of my kids. Like I'm getting like a little emotional thinking about it now because it kind of is what makes me more upset. I want those pictures and those videos of my kids walking, things like that were attached to my personal page. My business page, I didn't have a lot of it saved. I am starting to find places where I'm like, oh, that picture is saved, or oh, that spell working I did is saved, and I can just reuse that. And honestly, scammers helped me in this scenario because they had saved so many of my videos that I was like, okay, I'll just have to re-upload them.
Oh my God, that's funny. The scammers actually help. Isn't that the like funniest irony of all? Sometimes like help comes from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, I was like, that's crazy. I just started looking up my old handle and there were so many scammers of me that like they each had like some video that I needed, from like way back or newer. I was just like, thank you.
Honestly, that's such a bummer. I don't know if you knew this about me, but I used to want to be a journalist. And so I went to school for mass media, specifically radio production and audio production. So it's like kind of why I do what I do now. But I think the thing that sucks, when we don't do a simple search, like in the end, it really bites us in the ass. And so it's like, sometimes we have to learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah, you know what? My Etsy store is Nick's Place. My handle wasn't my business, if that makes sense.
The process that I'm the most curious about right now is because you had so many scammer pages and there's so many other individuals. I know Ritual Craft is dealing with this. There's a large metaphysical and occult community out in Denver, and a lot of the psychics out there are being hit by like scammers. So it's like, how is that process to, do you have to provide proof of the trademark? How are we supposed to protect ourselves? Because obviously having the trademark is important and useful. But like you said, if it's supplemental to another part of our brand, sometimes we don't need it.
Yeah, like I think that's what makes me upset. Well, I was upset with myself, but I did everything I did.
It's hard because a lot of us have to think about how we're going to protect our brand and all this. But I do worry sometimes because I know we had talked about this off the cast. There was a whole incident with the phrase protected by Santa Muerte because there was someone who was trying to trademark that. But the thing is like there's things far back that have used that prayer. So it's like, how do you trademark that when it's part of someone's culture,
Yeah, and I think that's what makes my situation almost similar is like, it's a cultural word that we're using. Like homegirl is very cultural to both in Latin communities and African communities. Like it's just at some point, I don't know if you ever saw, but like, I think Kylie Jenner was sued because she had the name Kylie. Somebody had already trademarked it. And it's like, okay, but that's her name. Not that like I give a fuck, but it's just like, would that person really be confused for Kylie Jenner? Like,
it's funny because there's a lot of discourse around the word homegirl because I started getting like really curious about where did the origins come from? And a lot of people say that it came from the Black community and that it was, something that was derived from a shortened word of the word homebody. But then some people also argue that it's derivative of the word hombre. But I'm like, I guess I could see how it could be a Spanglish.
Well, I think like homies, like when we go back, I think it can come from both. And it's like one of those things where it's like parallel. And then a lot of the African community, the Black community, and the Mexican, Latin, whatever community you're a part of, like I think that just they're so intertwined, a lot of those communities. So it's like a lot of the culture we don't even realize is so connected to one another as much as it is apart from one another. Because when you think about it, like in Spanish, we say like paisana, like, oh, es mi paisana, like we're from the same hood, we're from the same neighborhood, we're from the same place in Mexico. What I've known about it kind of just doing like Chicano culture studies, is it just kind of derived from there, like my home girl, like she's from Mexico too, and my roots are from Mexico too.
And you're right. So much of the culture is so intertwined. And I think we forget that a lot. And I think that like, obviously white supremacy divides people.
Yeah.
Especially like when a lot of us have the same like thought process and the same mission. But it's like we see it on both sides, right? Because I feel like sometimes some of the old heads, like they really just be really racist.
Yeah.
And they won't change up terminology. And I think that that's real fucked up. Additionally, my dad is like one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life, will help anybody. And it's interesting because when he was growing up here, I say growing up, but when he was here in like the 80s, probably in like his late 20s, early 30s, he had a really difficult time because he was one of the only Mexican men kind of in his area. And he kind of got it from all sides because he would have racism from like white dudes. But then my dad was such a ladies' man. So I feel like he dated all different types of women. He dated white women. He dated Black women. He dated Mexican women. He was like an aventurero, It's like, me gusta las altas, las chaparritas, las flacas, las gordas, y las chiquititas solteras. Like I like it. So, but I think because of that, because he was pulling like Black women too, that made like a lot of people uncomfortable and he got a lot of shit for it. And I think it's funny because sometimes I think that we're the poetic justice that sometimes changes things, right? Because my dad had this interaction with this gentleman that was really toxic. And it turns out years later, I ended up working at this organization where that man was a coach or something. And so like we ended up building a really cool bond. It was just so interesting, the dynamics between different individuals work out. And it's just like, we got to admit, like sometimes people be racist over the fact that they got rejected or they were made to feel less by someone in their own culture.
Yes.
That isn't necessarily, and it's a projection.
Yes. No, it really is. It's like everything you're saying, yes. Even like within Mexican culture, we shun each other out over themes. Crazy. And so then I just heard somebody the other day and I had to have this like conversation with her. I'm like, we have to stop thinking like it's the race that did us wrong, because it's not. It's the person.
Yeah.
And when we're able to separate that, then we're able to. Have you ever read the book White Fragility? But it that kind of speaks a little bit about that too. Like,
I've read it and I have some critiques about it because it was like written by a white woman, you know?
I think like for me with that too is it's hard because I remember when all that was happening, honestly, a lot of the backlash when I was speaking out saying, you know, like Black Lives Matter and things like that, like automatically a large portion of my followers were just like, well, what about us? Like, what about us as Mexicans? Like, that's not going to, and that's where that theme comes back in again, where it's like, how is this taking away from me not, you know, talking about, you know, our kids were being put in cages. I was there fucking advocating for that. Naturally, like society tries to pull the Black community and the Mexican community away from each other and then pin them against each other. You know, while they're sitting there watching us fight to the death against each other. I'm not going to be a part of that.
Dude, it's so fucked. And it's also just, that was one of the reasons that Fred Hampton was assassinated, because he wanted to kind of unite with the Latin kings. And they were like, that cannot happen because we have so much more in common than we realize, you know, like culturally. I have so many Black friends who they're just like, I love tacos, I love tamales. They might have grown up with a lot of like different cornbreads or like different corn related products. Like, okay, what are tamales? They're made with fucking cornmeal, you know, like.
Girl, you're like preaching to the choir. Like some of my tios were so pissed. I had like several Black friends of mine in my quinceañera. I was like, I don't give a fuck. This is my quinceañera, and like I want to have fucking, you know, different races in it, then that's my fucking business. But I do remember one of my tios being like, isn't this a Mexican party? And I'm like, you know what? We're all assimilating and these are the friends I want in it.
It doesn't that suck that I feel like it's, I don't know, some people just really have an us them like mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, the thing that I get really frustrated with like Mexican and the Latin community is we're very quick to be the victim, but then we don't sympathize with other people and their struggles.
No.
We're just like, but we had this. And it's very like me.
Yeah.
And it's like, y'all need to chill. And I think that there's also, I think here in the States, like it's really hard, I think, to be any type of person of color, really, because you don't know about your culture.
Yes.
But I think especially like being Mexican American, like we're being taught our history by like white people. That's already a whole thing because there's so much nuance in Mexico. There's so much history in Mexico. And it's just like, if you don't understand how that history played a part in your own life and how you've gotten here to this point, you don't really know yourself. You don't know where your power comes from.
It's like so complicated. Like our history, like I don't think people understand like Mexican means mestizo, right? Like it's like we're mixed. Like none of us really fucking know how much of the Spanish we have in us, how much. And even if we do like a test, it's like, do we really know? For me, like on one side of my family, like I'm very into Chicano culture. I identify as a Chicana. I feel like it's a whole different culture than maybe Mexican culture to some degree. And I like to study that. Like when I was in school, I studied that because it just was fascinating. My mother-in-law like runs the Chicano education department in Washington. Like it's a very big part of our lives, you know, Chicano culture. But it's very different. And, you know, you can ask my grandpa's mom, my great grandma, you would ask her, you know, where are we from in Mexico? And she would be like, we're from fucking here, you know, like with a thick ass accent. It would piss her off because she's like, we're from here. Like, because she's from New Mexico. Like that was once Mexico. It's a very different, it's crazy because how much like assimilation plays in. And like, I just like get so overwhelmed with it all, especially when you see people that are like, deny our colonizer. And it's like, I don't fucking know my life outside whatever the fucking colonizer did. Like, it's like, I don't know. And I don't want to feel shamed about it either. So I've just really been like telling myself when I get too in my head about that stuff to be like, okay, I'm going to focus on right now. Like, I'm just going to focus on right now.
As you should. I mean, honestly, it's hard. It's okay. You can't really win either way, right?
No.
Because it's like, if we do the things that the colonizer gave us, which is like Catholicism and this and that and whatever, we get people who get upset. Oh, well, you're not authentic enough. But then on the other side, right? Because I think that there's a lot of people who are trying to finger quote decolonize. But I think the problem with that is like, in order to do that, you really have to know the nitty gritty of your culture.
Yeah.
it's so much harder for us because we are Chicanas. And like, so we're in the middle, like, so we're in that liminal space, as J. Allen Cross refers to it. And it,
Yes.
nobody realizes how hard it is because it really is like we have to be Mexican enough for the Mexicans and we have to be American enough for the Americans. Here in the United States, like obviously there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of all this institutional racism, systemic racism, all these things that play into a part, which I would say I'm more familiar with the socioeconomics of the United States than I am for, say, Mexico.
Yeah.
But that being said, I also realize that the level of poverty I'm seeing here, and I mean, obviously there's places that have it real bad.
Yeah.
Indigenous reservations. Flint, Michigan, they don't fucking have water. But what I'm saying is in Mexico, we see it so much worse.
Yes.
Like the levels of colonial harm there are seen on such a more radical level that it just, I come back sometimes from Mexico just with a lot of like chingaderas and stuff that I bought. So I was just like, let me just make sure you have enough to eat tonight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Or just like, I don't know. It's just so weird. Even when you come back to like from Mexico and you're, you know, you're like kind of in that like culture shock depending on how long you were there. And sometimes I remember just coming back and just like feeling so guilty.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like I have all this stuff. And I don't know, it's kind of changed where I'm from. Like a lot of times, one of the themes my grandma used to say, like when she would talk about this country, she would be like, I'm blessed to be here. Like I'm blessed to be here. And I didn't understand that because a lot of times people will be like, fuck this state or this country, which, you know, sometimes, yeah, fuck this country. But like, I always go back to her way of thinking. I'm like, had she not come here, I would not be set up for the opportunities I have. And to some degree with that, what I was getting to with the white fragility thing, it's like, we have to accept one of the only good things that I really took. And I constantly remind myself is like, how am I entitled as a Chicana? Because I am. Like, I don't recognize it, but I am.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been a really big theme for me. But I don't know if you know this, like one of the themes when I was like trying to do all that, like a friend of mine was like, because I was struggling with it. I'm like, I feel like I'm a piece of shit because I want to continue doing Catholicism, but I also don't want to like do the church's way. And like, but I'm not like, I don't know all the Aztec gods and stuff. And like, she's really good about that. She knows a lot, like, cause that's what she's chose. That's the path and direction she's chose to go. And I support her for it. It's not for me because I just am still, but one of those things she was telling me, like, in that culture too, like if you think that everything, and our society does this, like they romanticize what it was like in that culture without really realizing, like if your son, like my son has a cowlick, like in some tribes, like if your child is born with a cowlick, they kill them. And it's like, holy shit. When she told me that, I was like, what? She's like, yeah, she's like, people just romanticize what they want about religion, about culture. When, you know, when it comes down to us, like once the like history gets passed down to us, like it's been filtered, it's been wiped clean. And then when we're trying to like go against something in a rebellious way, then we romanticize something else, you know? So I always just remember that when I'm like doing anything. Even Catholicism is highly like, I don't want to say that it didn't come without some fucking psychotic shit too, but I just get annoyed when people highly romanticize our indigenous culture, I guess, without realizing that there was tons of tribes. They were all fighting. Some people joined with the colonizers because they were fearful of other tribes. They willingly joined because they were like, well, this is our way to, that's why they sometimes say, you know, like in our culture, Mexican culture, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard that dicho, like we'll be pulling each other down rather than helping each other up. They say it stems from that. And I honestly believe in ancestral, generational type of curses and things like that. And it's like, that might be where that stems from. Like we had tribes actually joining up with colonizers to take each other down instead of like teaming up with each other to take down the colonizer. Prideful. Just crazy.
Well, the thing is, we come from a very visceral people, right? Like in some ways, we are still a very like primal people, especially if we don't get our emotions in check. And that's what the realization I'm coming to now is like emotional intelligence is so important. And also, how can you tame a spell if you can't tame your temper?
Yeah.
Like real talk.
Yeah.
But I want to say, no, that's totally true because it took me a really long time to understand why Melinche, who was Cortez's, I guess, concubine, you know, they had some children together. Like I had never understood, but she was also a sexual assault victim. You know, she was basically passed around. First, she was with this indigenous group, and then I believe she was with another one. She was taken from her family, you know, like, so I'm also just like, okay, if you're not treated like a person, but I don't know, it's hard in that situation. What would we have done?
Well, look how it plays out, girl. My mom, for example, my dad is not white, but my siblings' dad, all my siblings after me, their father is white. My dad was very abusive. sexually like assaulted my mom. My mom was assaulted by, you know, several people in her family. Mexican men, like by the time like she was done, I don't know, I'm getting emotional about this, but she was just, I am done like with Mexican men. Like, and she, because of her trauma, stemmed this stereotype and became racist because of her hurt. So it's like, is it okay? No. But like, am I trying to understand it? Like, she's not like that now. Thankfully, she's healed. But I just remember when I was younger and like, I only dated, you know, these cholos and stuff. My mom was like, fuck them, blah, blah, blah. She was very kind of verbally abusive to me about it but it also, again, it was just, if she was treated back in the day, I could say some men were machistos like that. It was just a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of developed this like kind of racist attitude towards it.
Yeah. It's difficult when you encounter men of your culture who have all these toxic traits and stuff.
Yeah.
Especially the issue with suegras, like really fucking meddling, like
Oh my God.
mother-in-laws is like, and I feel like it's because there's a lot of boundary issues, but like I digress. There's a lot of work to be done. And I feel like respectively, I think that until we all kind of figure out a way to do said work, we're not going to grow as a people.
I think it's coming. I feel like it's coming. Like I try to see like hope in some of the new generations. Even like some of the TikTok videos, they're hilarious because it's like you're calling it out for what it is. People are calling their tias out like, no, why do I need to answer this? Or no. There's a few times where in my family, I've had to tell like my suegra, like when she compares the kids, which I think is what causes a lot of our cultures to pinpoint each other. I'll call her out and I'll be like, we're not going to compare kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like new people coming in, this new generation, even like the Gen Zers, millennials, they're coming in and they're like, no, fuck no. Like, we're not going to compare our kids, or no, we're not going to throw shade at me. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's going to help. I'm hopeful for the future.
I think you're right. I also think that Gen Z and even a lot of millennials are like breaking through the respectability politics that definitely exist in like Mexican culture. It's just like a lot of people are just, oh, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to be rude. But it's like, but then they take all that abuse and it's like, okay, well, that's not okay too. Like you got to stand up for yourself.
Yes, even like there's a podcast called Somos Padres. I don't know if they're still around, but this was back in the day. And I was listening to themes, and because my mom was, you know, sexually abused, you know, one of the themes that they say is like, I get it respectfully, like, oh, go hug your tío. But it's like, if your child says no, like, I don't feel comfortable, or you notice how uncomfortable they feel like having to hug them, like, no. And that's one of those themes that maybe in our culture, we don't need to necessarily, you know what I mean? Have like, you can like shake their hand and saludarle or whatever. Don't be rude. But how many times were you like making your 13-year-old daughter, you know, hug her offend? You know what I mean? Like there's just things that I think that we think as rude, like, you know, our tias or tios would be like, ay, que like mala onda or whatever. And it's like, no, there's some reasons why we need to start putting these boundaries, and we don't need to hug every time we see each other.
Well, I think it goes back to, you know, the fact a lot of people, they lack emotional intelligence, and it's just creating boundaries. And especially there's a lot of narcissistic mothers, I think, in Mexican culture that we don't talk about enough.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh my God, Nick, I just want to thank you for sharing this space, for talking about our ideal hunt girl summer. Girls, this has been such a fun time. Where can everyone keep up with you, follow you, and support you?
So on my TikTok and my Instagram are the same. So Spiritual Haunt Girl. I'm a little bit more on TikTok these days, but I do answer everything. It's such a weird dynamic, but I answer everything through Instagram. And then my online botanica, that is Nick's Place on Etsy. So that has all my spelled items there.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I feel like it was a very powerful medicine because why is it, right? As a kid, I was always into creepy things and ghosts. And then as an adolescent, I wore a lot of black. I, at least in my mind, felt like a very punk rock state of mind. But that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what I was putting out. I feel like I was putting out angry goth girl. And that's the story for another day, right? But more importantly, I feel like I was always allowed to express myself and really show up for my love of Halloween. Whereas Nyx wasn't allowed to because she was more of a buchona. But, you know, some people aren't allowed to because they wear colors. We have this preconceived notion of what people should look like who enjoy particular things. And I feel like we have to stop putting each other in a fucking box because we get so upset, right, at white people when they do that shit. So it's like, why are we doing that shit to each other? It's just unnecessary. We have to undo a lot of the shit that we're doing to each other in letting go of a lot of those ancestral curses that no longer benefit us. We're going to see so much good. All the links for you to support Nyx are in the show notes. Additionally, I need to undo something, right? Because I feel like I did Malinche dirty. Because I referred to her just as Cortez's concubine, and she was a lot more than that. She had a gift for languages and could understand things very quickly and therefore was able to use that to her advantage. She was a sexual assault survivor. She did a lot of things, and obviously what she did was to sell out the Aztecs to the colonizers, which really weakened the Aztecs and then proceeded to continue on their continuous colonization of other places. Also kind of like circles back to, if you remember the episode I did with Unpacking the Erie about how Guadalajara and specifically Tequila were colonized. That's very important because they brought a lot of indigenous people with them. I think the indigenous warriors were double in the amount of the colonizers because a lot of my indigenous ancestors apparently were very violent, and they were like, not all of us are going to make it back, so we should probably help our odds. So a little bit more information on Malinche, and her indigenous name was Malintzin. She ended up crossing paths with Hernan Cortes because she was one of the 20 enslaved women that were given to the Spaniards in 1519 when she was 19 years old. She was born circa 1500. I know that this term has become unpopular, unsavory to a lot of people, but she then created what was one of the first mestizo individuals. She gave birth to Cortez's first son, Martin. She died at 29, February 1529. It's interesting because I feel like there isn't really a whole lot known about her. I'm looking at her Wikipedia page, which I will include in the show notes. But I feel like this is just very... And I'm sure there's tons of books and there's tons of other stuff, but what her page is... I'm going to look at Cortez's for comparison to see how much longer it is. And it is. There's a lot more information. And I wonder if it's just because they don't care enough to document it all, or because there was just more information on Cortez because the Spanish documented fucking everything. I don't know. For a long time, I think myself, like a lot of individuals, really didn't like and thought of Malinche as a villain. And arguably in some ways, I guess she is. But what do you do when a people hasn't treated you like people? Unfortunately, is that whole phrase of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that's definitely what she did. And I hope that this episode was really good medicine for a lot of us in the ways that we need to try and do better. We need to work on our own community. You know, when Ferguson happened, it led to a lot more work in the community from both organizers and a lot of nonprofits. I was an AmeriCorps Vista, and when I did that, I was able to see Bethany Johnson Javois speak. She gave this very powerful lecture comparing all of the events in Ferguson to the King's Crossing Station fire that I believed happened in the late 80s, early 90s. But the most important thing that I took away from her speech was that every community has their own work to do, right? Like white people got to check white people, Mexican people got to check Mexican people, black people got to check black people, and so on and so forth. We can't be checking or telling other people what they need to do until our house is in order. So let's figure out our house. I am so big on the school of thought of intersectionality and how we definitely in some ways have power over other people, but other people also in different ways have power over us. And it truly is like a social hierarchy at times. We have to learn how to uplift people and not punch down and do things that impact people who might not have the same privileges or opportunities or whatnot that we do. I'm looking forward to the near future. I think I want to have a trademark lawyer on the show because there's a lot of things that I don't understand. There's a lot of things I have questions about. And also there's this story that's really punching me in the throat right now. In the UK, there is a taqueria called Taqueria UK, and they are basically trying to make it that no one else can use that word, even though it's a cultural word. There's another taqueria that opened up not too far from them called Sonora Taqueria. And it just sucks because the people who are being sued, it is a Mexican woman and her husband, and they're being sued by a UK company. It reminds me of that whole situation that I talked a little bit about in regards to that prayer that said, protected by Santa Muerte. It's a very nuanced thing. I think about like Walter Mercado, and I think about all these black and brown and marginalized musicians that were taken advantage of, and obviously like protecting yourself is super important, but at what cost? When are we going to get to the point where nobody can use these words that are of cultural importance? So I just think that this is a really big discussion that I would like to sit down and chat with a lawyer about. I'm chatting with a few people, and as soon as divine timing allows for something to happen, I'll let you know. Thank you again for listening. I appreciate you being here. Definitely follow me on the socials at Tutia Bruja on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm on TikTok too, but like I'm not very good at TikTok. Additionally, definitely support and show up for Nyx because she's really rad and she does a lot of really funny fucking things on the internet. And I think that if you follow her and you're Latin or Mexican, I think you're going to relate to a lot of her content. And even if you're not, I think she just creates stuff that's really relatable. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. Have a good one. Bye.
Mm.